Hello, this is Chuck Solomon, and welcome to the Candidate Experience Podcast, where we focus on the job candidate journey from apply to onboard and the space in between. Let's get started. Welcome to the It Happened by Accident episode, where employer branding professional Bari Polay is my special guest. Listen to the insights she offers on topics we covered during our interview, including candidate experience, resilience, networking, and more. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please subscribe and do share with others. Want to comment, discuss, provide feedback, you can send me a note via LinkedIn or via the contact form on our site, www.thecx.xyz. Thank you for listening, and here's my interview. Hi, Bari. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. It is the end of September that we're recording this. It probably won't actually air this for in sometime in October, but if you would you let my listeners know a little bit, sort of your little bio, a little bit about Bari?
Yeah, happy to do that. Hi, everyone. I'm Bari Polay. I have been in the employer brand space for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was on the consumer marketing side. Most recently was working at Lyft, leading their employer brand efforts, but was unfortunately impacted by their COVID-related layoffs back in May. So I've been on the market looking for my next great employer brand opportunity these past few months. And as of last week, no longer am a candidate, which is really exciting. I accepted a new opportunity that I'm starting next week.
Congrats to you for your new job.
Thank you. Yeah, very excited about it.
Yeah. What is there anything that drew you into this talent attraction space?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when people ask me how I ended up here, I like to say that it happened by accident, to be totally honest. Like I mentioned, I was in the consumer marketing space and was in a role that was just becoming a little too niche for my liking. It was, as much as I loved working on social media, I was finding the role that was becoming a little too focused on social media, and I didn't see myself being only focused on that, say, 10 years down the line. And so I was doing the whole, mass applying thing and applying to every single marketing manager role out there and seeing what stuck. And there was a role that I applied to at Prudential, and at the time, I believe the title was Marketing Manager Recruiting. Didn't really think too much of it until the recruiter who had reviewed my application reached out. And really
Sure.
The way that he framed the position to me was that instead of marketing a brand or a product or a service, I'm really marketing the experience of what it's like to be an employee at Prudential. They really wanted someone who didn't have any HR background whatsoever. They really wanted someone who was a marketer at heart and could apply those hard marketing skills to attracting potential talent. So I found it to be, a little bit of a pivot, but a really, really exciting opportunity. And while there was definitely a bit of a learning curve, considering I knew nothing about recruiting outside of, my own experience as a candidate. So really, ultimately, I was able to hit the ground running really quickly and apply those hard marketing skills to help, raise Prudential's, reputation as an employer of choice.
Yeah, probably I would say your marketing background, it probably gave you a leg up, not knowing much about sort of the talent space and, having to learn that stuff, because ultimately as marketers, we're storytellers. Like that is what we do. You're just telling a story, to a different audience. So
Exactly. Yeah. And that was like a big part of my role prior to joining Prudential was in the content marketing space. So I really was able to take a lot of what I gained as a content marketer and really apply that to telling these really exciting stories about Prudential's own employees and the type of work they were doing and what the culture was all about. Gotcha.
So congrats again on your accepting a new job. So you've been through the job search now.
Oh yeah.
Is there, any challenges that you face that, you care to talk about?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey to say the least.
Right.
And I have noticed a couple themes that have emerged during my time as a candidate this go around. One of the things that has been really interesting is just on the topic of location. We see a lot of companies that are starting to shift to remote work that hadn't in the past. And I never expected that being in New York could potentially put me at a disadvantage, but you'd actually be surprised at how many companies are still very firm on location requirements. A lot of companies in the Bay Area, I've noticed, have been that way, where they really, really want someone
Right.
who's based there. And while I can totally understand that, especially if they don't have, a footprint in New York, for example, discounting candidates off the bat who, in the middle of a pandemic aren't willing to definitively say they're able to relocate across the country has been just a signal to me that not every company is evolving with the times, just seeing the direction that remote work is heading in. But what's also interesting with the shift to remote work is some companies are really open to having someone, especially companies that aren't in some of these major hubs, that are willing to hire someone remotely. But again, I've been finding that working in New York actually does put me at a bit of a disadvantage from a comp standpoint, where companies, are willing to have someone remote, but aren't necessarily willing to pay you, a New York or Bay Area based salary. So that's been at times a bit of a disqualifier for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how that plays out over time with the exodus of, tech workers, for example, in the Bay Area now able to work, not in the Bay Area with Bay Area housing and everything else, cost of living and stuff, but, deciding to move to Kansas or where have you, and how the companies are going to react to, the pay. So I think that's still an evolving story that's I'm find really fascinating. So
yeah.
But I would never think that being in New York would be a sort of a challenge and stuff. New York seems to be the epicenter for a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. Epicenter for the virus, unfortunately, not such a good stuff. But,
It's been
a lot of companies located there and stuff. So, can I ask, is the company that you're going to go start with, is it based in New York or
they are? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they in the office or out of the office?
They're out of the office.
Yeah, I guess I feel privileged to some degree. The last two roles I've had have been 100% remote. Even the last position I interviewed and got, they interviewed me remotely too. They gave the option to fly out there or not, and I'm like, I'll do it remotely. I'm okay with that if you are. So I'm
right.
And I think the way I looked at it is, as an interviewer, you have to sort of give up the day, to travel somewhere almost 2 days. And so it worked out well for me, I think. I ended up coming a month later. So, and it all worked out well. So if you could design an ideal candidate journey, what might that look like?
Yeah. For me, it's not something that's totally over-engineered. And this kind of goes back to another trend that I've picked up on as a candidate, which still blows my mind, is just being open and honest and transparent and communicative really goes a long way. There's been many instances where I've been ghosted, which it pains me to even have to use that terminology because I can't believe being ghosted is still a thing. But I think a lot of times recruiters forget what it's like to be on the other side and what it's like to be a candidate and how you would want to be treated. And honestly, the best candidate experience I had was actually the first role that I interviewed for after getting laid off from Lyft. I really just felt that the recruiter was like my friend. He texted me before my on-site interview to wish me good luck. Things like that just really stand out. So it's not like it needs to be any sort of unique and, again, over-engineered experience. It's the small touches that feel very personal that it feels like you are the only person the recruiter is working with. These no update updates really go a long way, just so you're kept informed and know where you stand throughout the interview process. And like, even when I got rejected from that role, I still felt good about it. And I wanted to be able to apply again in the future. Like, that's how you should really walk away from every interview experience that you had, that even if you didn't get the job, you felt good about not getting the job, in a way where you were treated with decency, and it made you more loyal to that brand and more interested in potentially working there in the future.
Yeah. What I'm doing with you today, I actually have two other podcast interviews planned with job seekers. So typically I interview people that are in jobs, involved in hiring, either hiring managers or in people or talent or HR and stuff. But so this is I wanted to talk to people on the other side of the desk. So getting sort of your perspective on this, and really wanting to sort of shed light on what companies can do. And what you just said actually echoes what I've heard recently from another job seeker is really like transparency, communication. And you can't over communicate in this, like what you mentioned with the no updates, telling people that, sorry, I don't have an update, but here's I just wanted to touch base with you. I think it's very reaffirming. And to your point about, still being, these companies still being high on your list of maybe you'd want to apply at some point in the future. Or I think also, companies understanding that their employer brand, how they treat candidates, reflects on their customer brand as well.
Absolutely. And for me, like, candidate experience is something that I've paid attention to long before I was ever in working an employer brand. I always saw that as a signal of how a company values its employees. Because if you're not being treated with decency and respect on the way in, it's unlikely that you're going to see that once you're in the door. So it's something that I've always paid a lot of attention to. And, as great of a candidate experience as I had with that company, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I've had experiences that are so awful that it would make me never want to work at these companies, even companies that tend to be considered the best places to work. You'd be surprised that some just don't have it together when it comes to the candidate experience.
Yeah, it's sad in my opinion that, and you mentioned it before, and you hated to use the word, and I hate using the word, and I can't believe it's, we're 3/4 of the way through 2020 and we're still talking about ghosting.
I know.
And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way, in my opinion. So, yeah. So there are lots of people unemployed, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, 40-something million in the US alone. Is there, any advice that you'd offer to others that are currently seeking a new job?
Yeah, a few things. One of them is like, you just need to try to maintain a positive mindset. I've had really great weeks, and I've also had really, really bad weeks where I'm like, I just don't know how much longer I can keep at this job search. Like, am I ever going to get something? And I'm just such a big believer in things happening for a reason and opportunities not working out for a reason. So I try to just take each experience for what it was, and oftentimes being able to reflect and see what potential red flags there might have been, where I'm like, okay, this was probably a good thing that it didn't work out. So just try to look at each experience, and even if it didn't necessarily work out, learning from that and being able to apply that in your future experiences as far as what you might be looking for. It's really tough. And I think it's just a matter of really needing to be resilient. It's really competitive out there. These are not normal circumstances. So I try to just remind myself that it's not just me. We are dealing with a pandemic and record high unemployment, and things are more competitive than ever. And you don't know what's going on behind the scenes as to what is influencing a hiring decision. So I try to just not take things too personally. The other thing I would mention, and I can't state this enough, is just not being afraid to network. I feel really lucky being a part of this employer brand community. There have been so many people that have reached out to help me along the way and connect me to opportunities. I, have in the past been sometimes reluctant to ask for help because I don't want to bother people. But people, like, as a whole, are genuinely really good and kind and want to help out if they are in a position to do so. So just don't be afraid to reach out and ask, not even just for a referral, but even just to have a networking conversation to potentially help, get your foot in the door somewhere.
Yeah, I've have always had sort of an open LinkedIn door for people that are part of my network, that if there's someone that I'm connected with that they're interested in talking to, what have you, I'm happy to help make that connection with folks. And I know firsthand it works. Oftentimes people get those jobs not through sort of applying, but it's through sort of the networking and introductions and stuff. And knowing that, for every job that gets posted out there publicly, there's probably 300 for some positions, applications that are coming in. And I think on the other side of the desk, the recruiters just sometimes don't have the time or bandwidth to adequately go through because they're bombarded.
Absolutely.
With just lots of people applying. To your point, we have unprecedented unemployment and a pandemic that unfortunately is still raging in the world. That seeking a job right now is doubly or triply more difficult than it was, previously. I think it's always been challenging. Like if you have a job and you're looking for another job, it's like having 2 full-time jobs. So just the stress of that can be I think pretty daunting for most folks. But I like what you said about keeping that you're being positive, keeping positive mental attitude. I think people need to be forgiving of themselves, and they deserve it and take care of themselves. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so true. I mean, for a while, I would dread Mondays because I'd be like, all right, it's going to be another week of, very few opportunities popping up. And I was like, you know what, that's the wrong attitude to have. I should be looking forward to Monday because there could be my next amazing opportunity popping up that day. And like just that small change in mindset made such a huge difference.
Yeah, I can relate to that dread and stuff. One of the things that I did is actually I'm on a Monday morning call every Monday morning at 9 a.m. And I'm with a group of 4 other individuals that each of us are exploring a startup idea or concept. And we're all at different sort of phases of it. But it's sort of our time to sort of share what we did last week and what we plan to do this week. So to my cohort in my group, I thank them because they make Monday mornings actually a bright. So I don't know if people can do that on their own. I'm sure people can do that on their own to find sort of a cohort of people to sort of. I feel like I'm a little bit accountable to them, even though like we've only actually met one time in person because of the pandemic and such, but we're all in sort of similar straits. We were all sort of lost positions due to the pandemic. We're all trying to explore this thing, and we're all trying to be supportive. So
how cool is that? I love, what a great way to start off the week. I'm gonna have to take that idea.
Yeah. I think in my previous job, I kind of, I didn't really like Mondays because they front loaded Mondays with all these meetings. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't get anything done. So,
I can relate.
Yeah. I'm like, why do we choose Mondays? Like, why don't we pick Tuesday to have all these meetings and stuff? But in any case, so, well, Bari, I appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me today and sort of sharing some of your wisdom out with my listeners. I'm sure they will appreciate it as well. If people wanted to get a hold of you, how could they do so?
Yeah, and first off, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed, chatting about my experience, and hopefully, others can relate to it out there and, help validate some of the themes that they've maybe picked up on. So, thanks again for that. And the best way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. You can search for me. My full name is Bari Polay, Polay.
Thanks, Bari, for your time today.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Thanks for listening to the Candidate Experience Podcast. You can reach out to us via our website, thecx.xyz. That's thecx.xyz.